Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Just note there's been a slight coup and Chair Squire's away, so this evening you have me at the con, so be patient with me. We'll start with the recognition of the Indigenous Peoples and Land Statement. London and Middlesex Community Housing provides housing on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lenawapanek and the Attawandaron peoples. We acknowledge the local First Nations communities in this area, the territory of the Chippewa of the Thames, the Oneida of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware nations. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. Today, the City of London and Middlesex County is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. Start with a motion to accept the agenda. Gary, seconded by Hadley, all in favor. That motion is carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest?
I do for this meeting.
Yeah.
My employer, SEM Construction Limited, is a bidder with respect to the 349 Warncliffe office renovation, so I will abstain from any discussion or voting on it.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Great.
Sorry, Gary.
Gary's right there.
I told you.
I don't own any business. So.
I told you, Phil's not here, be patient with me. Approval of the minutes from March 20th, 2025, so I'm bringing a motion to approve those minutes. Gary, second by Sarah, all in favor? Carried. Next is item number 6, communications. We have a letter from the City of London. His Worship Mayor Morgan and Councillor Pelosa are joining us this evening. Welcome, Your Worship.
Thank you. Happy to be here virtually. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had a kid who didn't make it to school today because he wasn't feeling well. So
I did that a lot, Josh, so that's okay. Miss school a lot, so the floor is yours.
well, why don't I let our budget chair and Councillor Pelosa start off since she's there in person, and then I will jump in after she leads the way.
Okay.
Thanks for having us tonight. I'm City Councilor, also the city's budget chair. You would have been aware that the mayor is trying to keep the tax rate 5% or lower. And council's authorized us to go out and deal with agency boards and commissions one-on-one to address what your needs are. 2, if there's opportunities for partnership, what you need, recognizing a lot of different boards in the city have other member municipalities at them, and it's a larger voice we can speak with if we do advocacy, realizing the needs are diverse across all our communities. So I will turn over to the mayor to make his comments, and then I will outline potential wording for your consideration for motions, just as other boards have done things, just so you know what they're kind of using. What timelines we're doing on the administrative procedural stuff at the end, I'll wrap up, but the intentions the mayor will speak to.
Floor is yours, Mayor.
Thank you. And through the chair, I really appreciate the comments that Councillor Pelosa has made so far. When we said we wanted to bring the tax rate down to under 5%, which is still, I think, historically a fairly high tax rate. Essentially, Civic Administration said we needed to find about $13 million of savings. What we didn't do was a straight across the board ask of every board and commission to say that's about 1.5%. Go out and find 1.5%. Our civic administration is going to try to do that within our structure. They have an annual service review program. They tend to be able to find some savings through that each and every year. I don't know if it'll be 8 million, but we'll have our own considerations of things that we'll have to discuss on how we would bring that down for the share that the city would take. But we know that we have to find well over $5 million from the boards and commissions if we're going to meet that. Again, we didn't say every board in the commission has to contribute, nor does it have to contribute in the same way, nor is it a flat across the board ask. Every organization out there has different needs, has different circumstances, and are at different stages in their own service review process of finding savings and efficiency. So our ask is is really a soft one, and that's, you know, we're looking for partnership and help. And if there's a way that you can bring down your budget, that would be great. If there's something you need to assist with that, that would be great. As Councillor Pelosi said, with some boards and commissions, what they need from us is advocacy with the provincial government for some support or some legislative changes that actually helps make some change with their budget structure. And generally, when this board needs help with those sorts of things, you know, we're always willing to. So this is a good reminder that we're advocacy partners on this, and we can do joint advocacy together. The other piece on the advocacy side that links into this, which is related to the budget process, but we weren't really contemplating when we passed the original motion, is the upward pressures that a number of us will face on from any sort of disruptions in trade or tariffing of trade relationships, which evolves on a daily basis, it seems. We want to be advocacy partners on that as well. I do a lot of work with that. So if there are things that the organization feels that are significant things that are going to impact its ability to achieve its operational goals because of upward cost pressures from tariffs or potential or existing counter tariffs, that's really important to communicate back to me, because we're taking a fairly strong advocacy approach through various mayors groups and municipal organizations to say, don't tariff things that we have nowhere else to go. You're just adding costs to organizations and municipalities and businesses in our cities. And you don't need to tariff back everything. So we don't expect them to get it perfectly right, but we're going to ask them to make adjustments as we go. If there's something you come across that is a significant upward pressure that the Canadian government has counter tariffed. The other piece is as they start to tariff things, they're filling up a pot of money at the federal level while they collect those tariffs. And so we're doing advocacy on the needs of organizations to be able to access those support funds. The example for the city side is if we face upward pressure on the cost of our capital plan, we would still like to maintain our capital plan, but we're going to need some support from the federal government to do so. Otherwise, we have to pull back on that at a time when the economy feels a little bit shaky, and we want to be an economic injection, not something that's pulling back. So we're advocating on that side too. So again, another area of partnership. These are all, I guess, budget related and related to what was the original ask, but it's you know, there's circumstances have evolved a little bit since then. So I wanted to add that additional context. And so far, and I mean, Councillor Pelosi will can go over so far what other boards and commissions have done with our ask and how they've chosen to start to look into things. But really also open to answering any questions you have. And again, this is meant to be a collaborative approach to let you know where we're trying to get to, and coming in person or virtually to start to have a conversation about you know, what you could do and where you could look and what your needs might be from the city for support in some other ways. So that's all I had to say. And I don't know if Councillor Pelosi wants to go over what other boards and commissions have done, but I'll hand the chair back, or the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And I'll have a couple of questions, but turn it over to Councillor Pelosi.
So as I also chair the budget process, which is now a year-long process, the mayor's timelines are ideally we have information for October for his consideration, for staff can work on it before we begin our fall deliberations. The motion for your consideration, it's a board, you do what you will with it, just this is what other boards have passed, and then you can add things on throughout the process. And I sent the wording to Paul that staff be directed to report back to the board for potential opportunities impacts to LMCH with a first report at the next board of directors meeting. So just simple, open to start the conversation here. Some boards have also asked and will be responding with a correspondence of what advocacy help they need. Realize we have a provincial government that's newly elected, middle of the federal election. Some are asking and we'll be highlighting how they tie into the city's strategic plan. Just reminding council, like you have this a strategic plan, we deliver that for you. Some will be highlighting if they were already a low ask coming in up front. So like we're already at that mark or below that mark. We're not giving more perhaps, or some are looking at if they have reserve funds where those reserve fund targets are. Some are high and they'll be coming back to maybe lower those. Not saying the reserve fund coffers are full, just we'll be in line with some other providers. So that's kind of where everyone's at. This board is different and unique in a lot of ways. And the services you deliver are also unique. So recognizing that, just we didn't want to handpick which ABCs we did or didn't want to go to. Because it would potentially turn into a not favorable news story, unfortunately. So we're equally across the board, Museum London, Tourism London, like everyone's getting a visit. But also, as the mayor said, a great opportunity of like, we're impacted by tariffs. We have these builds going on, replacement costs, everything's gone up a bit. Like, it is fair, like whatever your feedback is fair. We're just looking to also inform the mayor as he does advocacy with the Big City Mayors Caucus, and if tariff money is to be handed out, who needs it the most or was impacted for vital services.
Okay, thank you. We'll open up the question. I just want to let yourself know and Josh that being a mayor myself, I'm certainly cognizant of the pressures that you're under, but I should tell you real quick, it's a long drive between here and Strathroy, and I apologize to Paul. I have a couple of questions. Is capital ask part of this too, part of the budget process? I'm not familiar with. Because I'm going somewhere with a question, and it's
Yeah.
capital. It is part of it.
No, so like, I mean, I was saying yeah as in a just a way to fill space while I answer the question. Sorry. We're looking for tax-based savings. So
Okay.
if most capital programs are funded through debt for the large ones, but if it is something that draws capital levy, then that would be beneficial. And if anybody's unclear on the way that this organization might have debt with the city or how we finance things, I mean, I think staff either at our finance or at your team here would have a good understanding of that. But we're really looking to lower the operating budget. So there's a lot of capital pieces that just aren't in here, like because they're debt financed. But I mean that does help in the long run with debt servicing. But we're looking for a more immediate savings.
And the reason I asked that, both because I heard Elizabeth, you talk about help and advocacy. We have our own Strathroy Carnock Housing, so I'm familiar with this, that there are grants that may be possible that Paul may or may not know that you could help us with, that may help. And I do know that under the Housing Accelerator Fund, there's a possibility using some of those dollars towards affordable housing. I don't know if it's applicable, but I'm just throwing that out there for ideas. I'll turn it over to Paul and our Greg Thompson is the chair of our finance committee. So, and anyone else in the group has any comments, or did you have anything?
Yes, just a question and through the chair. And a statement first. So I'm aware the federal government has a tariff remission program. From my read of that, it was a fairly high bar or high standard to meet to demonstrate that something's in the public interest. So Paul and the organization have already looked at tariff impacts, and it's mostly on the capital side. But to me, that would be an obvious area where the city could possibly help out in supporting any application for tariff remission on capital projects where they are hit with tariffs.
You have something, Justin Collins?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a few of my thoughts on this. One of the things I want to make aware, like wearing the two hats, I guess, but I think it's important for council to remember. And one of the things as a board member that I'm keenly aware of is we have just undertaken a large regeneration program. So I'm leery of jeopardizing any of those projects, just recognizing it's the first major investment we've seen in community housing in a long time. So you look at the Southdale project and what's going on there in terms of getting more units online. And so for me, I'm recognizing the budget pressures, but also recognizing that housing is like a major cornerstone of our strategic plan, and that we don't have a large stock of affordable housing. And so I just want to be aware, when staff go back and look at things, that I personally am not looking to jeopardize any of those programs, because I think it's incredibly important that we get those units online and continue that work that we've just started, because it is a huge undertaking and it'll kind of dictate where housing goes over the long term. I guess in terms of advocacy, one of the things that I'd like to see more of, and I know it's a difficult ask because I just don't see any traction on it, but recognizing we have a lot of folks who are on ODSP, OW, the housing allowance that community housing gets is quite low. But I also recognize that the rates themselves are low, so I mean, you're taking from a pot that's already quite small. But recognizing any opportunity that, you know, the mayors, I should say, get to advocate to the province, to have conversations about that, because it is a pressure in terms of, our tenants and the rent that we collect. So,
Any other comments, questions?
Can I add a comment to that?
You sure may.
Yeah, so I think Councillor McAllister, who's obviously sitting today as a member of this board, he makes some good points. And again, like we have identified within our strategic plan critical priorities, of which housing is one. And we know that this organization, and I've sat on this board in the past, has significant needs. You know, we're not asking people to jeopardize their significant and impactful projects. But we're looking to say, take another look to see what you can do and what you can find. It's why we put out the invitation for participating in our initial kind of preview of how we do service review. The city has, over the past decade, carved almost $60 million out of its budget, which net in total, is about $250 million without any layoffs or changing of any priorities or plans. It took a while, but it was impactful and continues to be. And that's what staff continue to do in each and every year in a different part of the organization. So there are ways to try to find pathways to some savings. There are other organizations I can tell you who've seen, like, listen, we have, reserve fund targets of 5 to 10%. We don't need to have that much. We we consistently budget a little tighter than that. So now considering lowering them to the 3 to 5 or 3 to 6% range, which might free up some one-time capacity to free up some dollars in some way. Others are just looking at the way that the inflows come in. Sometimes you get full cost of dollars for something. You don't usually use them till, 3/4 of the way through the year. And so there's a systemic surplus. I'm not saying this organization has any of those, but those are the types of things we're asking to see if you can dig into and find. We're not saying cancel your most important, significant projects that we actually are very supportive of and have invested in. We would like to find a way to find as many savings as we possibly can without any significant operational impacts. Beyond that, if there are some nice to do's that you do that you might want to, hold back on or shift the timing of, those are also things you can consider, but there are impacts to that. So we recognize that some things will have impacts and that each and every board will need to discuss and weigh those impacts and whether they would even want to forward them on for consideration for us. But I think the councillor makes really great points, and that's kind of the message we've been echoing as we've gone out as well. We're not looking to completely disrupt what everybody's trying to achieve here. At the same time as we're trying to find some tax savings and take some pressure off of homeowners across the city as well. So I just wanted to add that context.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor. Are there any other comments, questions? Okay. Seeing none, you're more than welcome to stay with us, Josh. If you go and take care of a sick child, you're welcome to stay too if you wish.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard, but he's knocked on the door like 6 times during this last 10 minutes. So I might end up going. So
oh, and that's fine, and we don't get to say it. Have a great Easter weekend, okay? So
yeah, you too, and really appreciate you guys giving us time. Like I know you've got lots on your agendas, and so thank you for sharing some of that time today to hear our message and consider our ask. We really appreciate it.
And if you can, if you don't, it may be worthwhile to hear something I want to talk about when we get down to our People Service and Housing Committee reports. There's one on security that I specifically asked we could highlight that tonight. So you may want to find a way to get that report. Okay, that being said, we'll now move on.
And just forward it onto my office. I'll read it. Okay.
Yeah, it should be worthwhile. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Do we have a motion coming from this, sir?
No, my motion would be to defer it And to put it to the finance committee, that seems to be the appropriate place to put it. When do they meet again?
The finance committee meets mid-May.
In May? Okay, yeah,
May
that's
13th.
okay.
So do we want to put a motion that staff report back to the finance committee?
Yes, someone, I can't make that motion as chair, so if someone wants to make that motion. Councillor McAllister, is there a seconder for that motion? Greg? So the motion is to have staff bring a report to the finance committee with the reductions, correct?
To identify opportunities for
Identify
reduction,
opportunities.
identify current cost pressures for the organization that need to be considered in that,
Okay.
and to identify opportunities to collaborate on advocacy,
Yes,
to improve our financial position, to further support our mission.
I think it's appropriate it goes to the finance committee. That's their meeting, so we have a seconded motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, I was going to ask that, motion is carried.
And thank you, for having us. I do have a kid at home who it was his birthday yesterday, so I still gotta do the cake thing. So, it was the right cake. Teenagers are great, so I'm gonna head out, but thank you. And absolutely, highlight how you tie into the city strat plan too. And I know that we don't think necessarily of housing and revenue, but as you have intensification on another Imagine Celltail project, less time down between units, and the refurbishment and getting them back out in the
Yeah.
market, it all really highlights the great work you're doing for the revenue too.
Thank you.
Thanks. So there aren't any delegations this evening. There's nothing on the consent agenda. Next, the finance reports for approval. And that over to.
This one was coming from John.
Was it okay?
See John present, so.
I would be John.
Okay.
So this is regard to the Warrencliff office renovation construction contract.
Yes. All right, and through the chair, so what you have before you is a recommendation by staff, which was endorsed by Finance and Audit and Risk Committee, to approve the request to enter into contract with Tradition Construction for $213,660 to build out the community office at our Warrencliff location. That is something that we have committed to, is increasing our site presence, and we need to create space for staff to work at that location. The Warrencliff site was selected because it is a high density site with 2 high-rise buildings, and it is a higher needs community with not a whole lot of consistent service. So to have staff available more consistently there in that neighborhood would have a positive impact for those tenants and neighboring buildings. So we're asking that we award the contract to Tradition Construction and to initiate that work so we can get that office open for our tenants.
Any questions? Okay, this is one I had, does that come out of, is that a capital item or a operating budget item?
This is a capital
It's capital.
item funded through business case 22.
Okay.
There's a small capital allocation in that budget, in that business case.
I don't see any questions. Someone to bring the motion for approval. Gary, second by, thanks Kathleen. All in favor? That motion is carried. The landscaping report, contract award.
Chair. So the purpose of this report is to seek the board of directors approval to award the contract for landscaping services for all London and Middlesex properties to TLC Landscaping. And the recommendation is that the board of directors approve the awarding of the 3-year contract with a 2% annual increase, and authorize the staff to take the necessary action to give effect to the recommendation. So the tender, the documents were posted on bids and tenders in February and came down in March. We had 14 registrations with 2 bid submissions. And we recognize that the vendor or the proponent of choice is not, or did not submit the lowest bid. However, the rationale for selecting the proponent is the value of service to enhance our properties and curb appeal, as well as provide a better experience to the residents.
Any questions, Kristen?
Just a comment, I noticed, this past year during the summer months, they didn't do as an efficient a job as they did the previous few years. But the winter months, it was a 5-star service, like all the way with the salting and everything, so I don't know what happened last summer, but it wasn't as much of the leaf blowers going in and picking up the garbage and things like that they've done before, so I wondered even if they had changed, and then I read the report and said they hadn't, so hopefully they're gonna pick it up again this year or summer.
That's the hope. This is a new vendor that we're bringing in as well, and it's not the same.
Oh,
vendor of
okay.
last season,
Okay,
so
I
it's a-
misunderstood
yeah.
that then. Yeah, no, awesome.
Any further questions? Someone to bring a motion. Kara, second. Gary, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that motion is carried. Thank you, Christine. Next is the executive committee report for information, the update given by the committee chair, the CEO report. Paul.
Thank you, and through the chair, what you have before you is my CEO report that went to the executive committee earlier in March. Just a few things to highlight. We had reviewed the CEO work plan, which is attached, which sort of is not meant to mirror the organizational strategic plan, but really highlight some of those sort of other items that we need to sort of work through. So what you have is the objectives as in 2024, but with, or sort of the strategic objectives as we set out in 2024, but just have changed the objectives required for 2025. So expanding our impact, which is really identifying opportunities to increase the amount of type of housing we have in the communities, create a foundation for success, which is continue to evolve the organization. And this year, we're going to focus on implementing the organizational review recommendations. Increase our profile, which is to continue to get our story out. We've done some work on that. We have some work left to go. And financial sustainability is critical, as we've just had the presentation from the mayor and the budget chair. We have to make sure that we continue moving down that path for financial sustainability. I think the other thing I will highlight from the report is 2 quick things. Under the organizational review, we are moving forward. We have posted for the chief operating officer, and we'll start interviews imminently for that. And the other thing that was sort of in the highlight around this time was the tenant process at 85 Walnut. So we've shared with you the flyer they distributed, the letter they provided for us, as well as some of those issues they have. So just for the awareness of the board, we have communicated back to Acorn. We have sent a mailer to all tenants at 85 Walnut, just saying you're aware. And so this is what the letter said, and this is how you can address those issues if you have them. Our focus is really looking at the customer service needs and the customer service gaps that led to the letter and the protest. So we're going to continue to work on that. There is some follow-up going on with Acorn. I'm not sure the status of it now, where we'll have a meeting. The organizational perspective is we're not in a position to deal with some of the issues raised, or most of the issues raised by Acorn, because a lot of it is a one-on-one. An individual has an issue, they don't feel we're responding to appropriately. We have to make sure what the nuance of that is so we can actually resolve the issue. And some of that is us communicating better if we're not able to do it. And some of it is actually us being more responsible or having the tenant do something different. And a lot of that nuanced stuff can't be done in the structure of a committee meeting. So that will continue to be our focus, but we will continue the conversation with Acorn as we move through this. And we do have a town hall set for 85 Walnut in May or June. We start them in May, and we'll have opportunity for tenants to have discussions and share their issues. We'll give them updates. I think there's definitely an information gap and a communication gap that still exists between LMCH and the tenants. So we'll continue to work on that. So I guess with that, I will let see if there's questions.
So any questions? Thank you for that, 'cause I was gonna highlight the Acorn.
Yeah.
The protest, so thanks for the update. Any questions? Seeing none, motion to receive this report. I'm sorry, it's for approval, I apologize, it's for approval. Someone Hadley, second by Kathleen, all in favor. Votes are carried. Next is, there's 7 items from the People Service and Housing Committee, which I am the chair. There was one that I wanted to highlight. I did ask Tim if he could join us. I prompted Paul with the Community Safety Unit status report. But did anyone have any questions on any particular report? As always, as the chair, I'm always amazed by the work that the group does, everything, people, it's our tenants, and it's trying to make life better for the tenants. I thank everybody in senior management for that, but I want to take a moment to highlight the community safety, and I was hoping that the mayor would be here for this, because the focus of the group, and when you look at the Acorn protest, has been on pest control. But when you read in the Acorn, they highlighted security as one, and I sat in the committee meeting, and you talked about security, but I began to ask Tim some questions. And I was surprised, and I should have known this, by what our security team does. They're not just commissionaires or, concierge. Actually, they wear vests. And when I came in, there was one of them here tonight. And then I also saw there was, the violent incidents that they have to deal with. There's use of force that they have to deal with. So, and also wanted the mayor to hear this, that I believe it's 3 new security officers that Tim is asking for. So there's a true budget need for that. But I wanted to highlight that to the group that I don't know if it's sad is the right word, but we need a full robust security force at our buildings, and it gets lost that we have to do that. And I looked at, the reports, the incidents of force, and the incidents that they have to respond to. When you look at, I think there was a gun incident. I think there was a stabbing at another building. So I think sometimes the work that Tim and his group do, and it's necessary work, kind of gets lost in the committee, right? We're all focused on pests and all of that and cost, but Tim or Paul, if you want to speak to it, but my other concern was too, if you could describe just what, I don't know if officers is the right term to use, but what do they do, and what do they wear, the training that they have. So I think it's important for the group as a whole to know what our security team does.
Sure. So there's kind of a few pieces to that. So I'll kind of just unpack it one by one. Pardon me, I have a cat.
I
So
appreciate you joining us tonight, Tim, by the way.
of course. We'll start with what they wear. We do have to comply with certain ministry regulations for the word security on the back of our patches. They do wear, as you mentioned, Colin, they do wear a ballistic vest. So they wear a vest, which also helps them carry all their equipment, take some pressure off of their back. They do wear some LMCH shirts that kind of distinguish them from other security staff, which are our after-hour team. We make very clear that there's a difference between the two, because our in-house community safety staff, they do the same annual use of force training that the contract vendors do, but they receive a lot more training on LMCH housing specifically, who our tenants are, the programs we use, how they interact with our legal services team, how they store files. All of that kind of stuff is specific to LMCH. So their day-to-day is very different, to be honest with you. Their mandate is to ensure the wellness and the safety of our tenants, whether it's, concerned with non-tenants or things that maybe wander into our buildings. Is their primary focus. But it obviously can extend beyond that. Police partnerships are a huge part of what they do on the daily, as well as supporting the vulnerable tenants that do live in our building. Sometimes their concerns may escalate to a community safety need, and that also can become a part of their day to day. In addition to the emergency response portion, we see the incidents that are kind of listed in the Q4 data. They respond to those incidents. They also respond to the minor and major incidents as well. So every day is really quite different. Their mandate is essentially to make sure that our buildings and our properties are kept safe, and that if someone needs support, they either provide the support or they connect that person with someone best able to support them, whether that's a community relations worker, maybe addiction services, CMHA, or other housing staff, police, etc. And that's really what we're going for. I hope that answers your question.
No, and just to highlight, so there was a firearm incident on March 2nd. Was there any involvement by your team members in that in any way? Other than it's just reported as an incident? This one where there was a noise dispute and it escalated.
Yeah, so this is going to be a really great example of like three-way partnership. So we had our contract vendors overnight who would have noticed the issue. Because of the timing, we also had our community safety unit coming in. So they were able to partner with the police and kind of help them do the video searches of the building, as well as making sure that that evidence was transferred to them in a secure fashion, following their IT protocols. So yeah, our after-hour security team had involvement with it, the CSU had involvement with it, and London police were fantastic. So yeah, we had some involvement, and it was a really great partnership, to be honest.
Okay, is there any questions? My whole purpose for the board was just to highlight the work that this team has to do and kind of the dangers they face. So, all the other things we talk, so thank you for the work that you do and your team, and I just want to recognize it is dangerous work that you're doing out there, so.
We work to keep it safe, but thank you all.
Yeah. Any questions, Tim, or anything? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Hadley.
Through the chair, just to your point in terms of, I know you wanted to relay that to the mayor, but as you said, I think it's important to call out the things that we view as like critical in terms of
Right, this is a
what we're
critical,
hearing.
yeah.
And so, this being critical, I mean, we also always hear about the pest control. We've got a lot of capital projects. So those are the things in a report that we look at, I would imagine would be identified as the ones that we're not looking at necessarily.
Yeah, and just through the chair, I think that's sort of one of the, clean, safe, well-maintained housing.
Right.
So we're trying to bring that all together because there's a relationship. If you feel safe in your community, you're more engaged with staff, you're more engaged with your neighbors and things like that. So the work that this team does and our other community service, security service provider is really critical. And in terms of, we were able through the multi-year budget process for 2024 to 2027, we were able to secure 3 new community safety specialists that increased our ability to serve our community. So now we have staff able to serve the community 8 to 8 on Monday to Friday, which is great. We have been able to enhance our overnight and weekend support across our communities, being able to respond to noise complaints where we've never had that capacity in real time and those types of things. And that is part of our budget request that was approved in the 2024 to 2027. So if we were to find savings and walk some of those funding back, our service level would drop. But that our service need is to the point we don't really, we wouldn't voluntarily want to do that because we're just getting going with our tenants and addressing some of the long-standing issues we have. And one of the things that, when we look at what happened in 2024, I think our security staff have responded to over 5,000 incidents of moving trespassers out of our building in 2024.
Yeah.
That's a lot of activity, right? Even if you're running overnight and 7 days a week, that's a lot of keeping people moving out of our buildings that shouldn't be there to keep our tenants safe. And that is some complicated work. So there's a lot of good work happening. So I appreciate you
No, I think it's
bringing the
important.
conversation forward.
Being once light reading. I don't have any, the assault on March 17th where there were multiple residents and a replica firearm involved, right? So that's kind of the world that we deal in, and that's fine. But anyways, So we need to approve these for information, all 7 reports. And someone to bring a motion. Kara, second by, thanks, Greg. All in favor? Carries. There are 3 reports for approval. The first is the updated occupational health and safety policy. I see Dirk back there in the background. I don't know if
He did make it.
he made it, so he can't escape that much. So if we just give a brief overview for the group, that would be great.
Yeah, so my apologies for being on crossroads at Adelaide, slowed down, so just kind of getting into it. Through the chair, the policies for approval by the board of directors, by the Bush Committee. As you're aware, we have an obligation under the Occupational Health and Safety Act to do at least an annual review of our existing policies, both on occupational health and safety, as well as on workplace harassment, violence and sexual harassment. The committees, the reports for approval by the board provides updates to our policies to reflect the current legislative updates. They are not significant in the sense that there are not broad ranging changes to our 2 policies, but they have been updated to reflect changes in the Occupational Health and Safety Act that provides for specific inclusion and recognition of harassment and other activities under the Occupational Health and Safety Act that can occur in electronic provision. So some of the key updates is to just provide some specific recognition that the proper common terms around that can occur through electronic or information technology means, as well as affording the organization the opportunity to move some of our existing functions, such as meetings of the Joint Health and Safety Committee or Joint Health and Safety Boards to an electronic format. Helpful because we have quite a large variety of workplaces. So it does not impact or provide us an update to our existing policies, merely gives effect to the legislative updates. I will, however, just as well clear with the committee is that at every opportunity, our Joint Health and Safety Committee prefers, just because points that the chair of the board has highlighted, to review and make means to review these policies so that they don't really govern and dictate how we as an organization respond to some of the complex issues. And that work is ongoing. So depending on the results of that, we might see some future updates to bring for both the committee and the I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's sort of in a nutshell.
Are there any questions for her? Seeing none, motion to approve the policy. Kathleen, second by Gary, all in favor? Carried. Next report is the visitor and guest policy. That's it.
Thank you. We share in the package of new visitor and guest policy. The standard practice has been that tenants were not allowed to host guests for longer than 5 consecutive days without written approval from LMCH. Any failure to report changes would have resulted in loss of rent to subsidy. In trying to balance tenants' rights to hosting guests and having independent living environment with our RGI obligations, where there were lots of rules about having to report any changes in household compositions, how long someone can stay, who is eligible, trying to balance all these requirements. We're proposing increase to 30 consecutive days allowance. This will provide great flexibility for tenants in hosting friends, family. We've heard sometimes there are feelings of isolation, and we're hoping that this allowance will also help those who need it. So we're seeking your approval on this policy.
Are there any questions? There are actually 2 recommendations. First is to approve the visitor and guest policy. Second is to authorize staff to take necessary steps to give effect to the above recommendation. Motion.
Oh, I just had a quick question.
Yep, jump right in there.
Thanks, and through the chair, in terms of increasing the 30 days, so I'm assuming there would still be rules regarding like if the visitor breaks, that would that pass be revoked, or how would it work in terms of if, you know, there were violations, how would we deal with that?
Right, so the policy also reinstates responsibility of tenants who are responsible for all the actions of their guests. It is spelled in the policy, so if there is any misconduct by a guest, the tenant would be responsible. We would follow our standard process for following up with the improper.
Question? Yes. For you, what, how do you enforce this?
So there are multiple ways we can do that. When we receive reports from other tenants or potential community agencies that someone is staying in the unit, we would send a letter to the tenant, have a conversation, what we call is an illegal order potentially. So we request proof, whether it's a guest, whether it's somebody staying in the unit. At that point, we allow tenants to have an opportunity to add that person to the lease as an occupant, or they can declare them as a guest. Depending on how tenants choose to proceed, we would either gather all the information, include them in the household composition to calculate their income in the rent year to income calculation, or we would treat them as guests if they have address also.
Any other questions? Seeing none, someone bring a motion. Natalie, your hand was up, I saw that. Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any, carried. You should see when I do council, even blank, you bring in the motion. Staff report, the minimum age requirements for senior housing, Alyssa.
Thank you. Through the chair, what you have in front of you is a report requesting your approval to change minimum age requirements to 60 plus for all LMCH seniors housing and to authorize LMCH staff to take the necessary steps to give effect to this recommendation. We've identified through the work and tenant placement that several LMCH sites have different age requirements. Some are listed as 50 plus for seniors buildings. And when we heard from residents, residents identified that some of the individuals moving in between the ages 50 to 60 are not necessarily on board with seniors living or what's traditionally perceived as seniors living. Some of them are still actively working, engaged in different activities in the community. And so we've conducted analysis in the report. You will see the number of household that was housed in 2023 and 2024 that were under the age of 60 plus. It is not a major impact, but there were still some households that were housed. And so we recognize that this change will have some impact. At the same time, there are over 1,000 households of 60 plus on the 1-bedroom wait list at the Housing Access Center. And so we do not anticipate that this change will have a negative impact on our ability to fill units.
Any questions? I have one, just because with, put my county hat on, so Newberry, it's a 50 plus building. Do you know off the top, is there a waiting list for people? It's different out in the country, right? It's here in London, somebody can go from Walnut to wherever, it's not as big an issue, so you know there's a waiting list for people going to the Newberry building?
I don't know specifically, but
yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah. That's all right. Newbury is a small site, and
yes.
Looking at the numbers, we only housed one individual in 2023 and 2024,
okay.
Which tells me that usually don't move out. Very low turnover at those sites, so I don't anticipate concerns.
Okay. Okay. Questions? See none. Someone to bring a motion. Second by Greg. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. You're up again, Alyssa, with the eviction prevention policy.
Thank you. Through the chair, what you have in front of you are two eviction prevention policies. One is regarding non-payment of rent, and another one is for cause. These are new policies to LMCH. We've been doing eviction prevention work for many, many years. However, it's become necessary that we state our commitment in a policy. Sometimes what we experience is that support agencies come into the legal process very late, trying to support individuals, and they don't realize or they're not aware of all the work that we are trying to do from the beginning to prevent evictions. And so in these policies, we're stating our commitment to eviction prevention.
Or any questions? Okay, seeing none, motion to approve these two policies. Greg, second by Gary, Hayward, Gary. Thank you. There are no presentations, there are no in camera. Is there any inquiries or new business from anybody on the board? I have one. Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you to the board. Through the chair, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say to the board, I kind of want to apologize, to be honest. There was a CTV story about us trying to set up meetings with city councilors. I know that was something brought forward at the previous meeting. There's a lot of back and forth in terms of the clerk's office and privacy concerns and everything else, and we tried our best to accommodate, and we ended up having to cancel it. And I think that for whatever reason, the media took that the wrong way, and I don't think it should necessarily be viewed as a bad thing. Like, I want to say my intentions were good, and I wasn't trying to do anything to embarrass the board, because I do think there's value in having counselors come and ask questions about their properties. And I think we should still do it, maybe with smaller groups. But it wasn't my intention to give any bad press to the board, so sorry for that.
No, I'm actually gonna ask you questions then, because I was
Yeah.
gonna let it slide.
Oh,
But I, on my desk in my office, I have the little white ombudsman's book that says what you go in camera for.
Yeah.
And the main one is to move the business forward of the board. So by going, we weren't moving the business forward of the board.
Yeah.
And you could also, I'm sure your clerk's office is a lot smarter than me, maybe. But you also can do it for an education session, right? Did they consider all, I would imagine they, because that is one of the 14 exceptions why you can go into hit camera.
Yeah,
Not that it matters, I just,
Yeah,
I flipped open my book and I went, I would have got that one.
yeah, I mean, I think there was also issues in terms of, there was the worry that, you know, people might bring up tenant specific issues.
Yeah.
And that there are privacy concerns with that, because, I think, again, those are issues that should be dealt with in closed session. I think there's still, to your point, like, I think there's value in the educational purpose, but I think you would have to kind of set some ground rules in the beginning in terms of what can be spoken about in open session versus closed session, because I think
This was gonna be in closed session.
depending on what they wanted to talk about, right? Like, there's certain things that you can't talk about in
Right.
open session.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw that, just baffled me.
I know, but anyway, I just wanted to say,
Nope.
I'm sorry for that story, because that was not my intention. I wanted to give the counselors the opportunity to ask these questions, because in the past, when we bring forward our annual report, I think we take a lot of unnecessary flack, and I think trying to have those conversations before those reports come out is beneficial for both counselors and the board to be able to have those conversations.
Thank you. Any other inquiries or comments? Well, I have one. I appreciate everybody coming on a Thursday before a very long weekend, so thank you, and I wish everybody a very happy Easter and a good long weekend. So with that, motion to adjourn. Badly, second by Kara, all in favor, carried. I wanted noted to Phil that I got done way before you.